webinar. First, or through the webinar, feel free to use the chat to ask questions or provide responses to the participants. And the will also be opening it up for discussion in the latter half of the web. So just know that your phones will be unmuted, and we'll let you know when things later in the webinar. So if you please use the chat box on the right-hand side. Next slide, Travis. All right, today we're going to talk through step 4 of the CIID Data Integration Toolkit, which is focused on, as I mentioned earlier, creating a Master Integrated Dataset. And obviously this comes after step 3, which is focused on documenting the data that will be integrated. And so this is the next step in of progression within that integration toolkit CIID. Today you'll also hear about some of the challenges and strategies for doing so, and especially hearing from some staff who have experience doing this work within states as part of CIID, but certainly also previous lives as state staff as well. So, next slide. We're going to go through the actual toolkit language themselves, talk about how to create data set. I mentioned you'll hear from several staff members about state experiences, this work, and then hoping to have a discussion with you all on what you foresee some of the challenges in potentially doing this work or from your own experience itself. Then discuss ways to mitigate those challenges and work towards more comprehensive or more integrated data systems within your states. Next slide. Okay, so as I said, my name is Aaron Petrillo. I'm the Technical Assistance Lead, co-lead here at CIID, and I'm joined by my colleagues Anthea and Bruce Boll, who are going to taking you through today's presentation. So, Anthea, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Anthea Brady. I'm on the CIID Technical Assistance team. I'm working with one of our intensive TA states right now. I've done quite a bit of work with CIID and with data integration, and previously working with states in their data warehouse implementation.
And I'm co-lead of the knowledge development section of CIID, history as an IDA data manager for the great state of Oregon, and numbers of states around special education data over the last 20 years.
Great. And I'll let you take it the rest of the way.
Our next slide is actually a poll to get a better understanding of you, the audience, for this. And to that end, Tress, through the Master Technology. Folks, you are employee of CA, or we're not looking at for TA staff here, but if you would pick the role or roles plural that best describe your role, we'd be interested in knowing what that is. So take a couple of minutes if you can see the poll on the right. This is on the right. Or showing, should I?
Once it's finished, it'll display.
Okay. So how will detail number of respondents? Then we're capable of hands of when to close the poll so we can see the results.
Blank. People have stopped.
Okay, so of the 50 respondents that we had, boy, we've got a pretty spread. Only 4, so I'll keep my special ed stories to a minimum. IT, and special ed staff, okay. Spread, about 20 folks not choosing to answer. Okay, thank you guys. Gives us a sense of who we're talking to. Travis, I'm moving slides from you. Are you? Here we go. Very late. Data Integration Toolkit, designed specifically for SEAs, ed data, being a special ed data manager. Multiple times in that tenure position, I found myself with multiple sets of data around special education. Okay? We believe from a SID perspective that having a single source of truth is in terms of your reports and presenting, but also provides numbers of data efficiencies for the state education agency. So with that in mind, we designed a toolkit for CAs to use if you wanted to embark on the data integration. For example, integrating your IDA or special education data with your SLDF. Now, we just have to teach that before we focus on step 4 of this toolkit. We believe the toolkit is such that it's going to give you collectively a process for integration, step by step, with some tasks. Plus, it's going to look at communication. You all saw that we had a wide number of folks on this call. Your own silos, despite the fact that we tried to de-silo education agencies, there's still some siloing. We end up with our own nomenclature that in and of itself can lead to confusion. In hopes of having a single toolkit, we can minimize the confusion and maximize the understanding around our integration efforts. The little roadmap in front of you is the 8 steps. We are on step 4 today. Previously have done calls on these steps. Even if you were not part of that, you can jump right in here. Number was to really decide if data integration was something that your SEA was going to move forward on. Number 2 was, assuming it's a go from step 1, is to create a little project plan and the structures that are going to support that integration work. In step 3, which is a webinar that we did earlier this calendar year, it's about gathering, kind of throwing a big net and counting all the data, system elements that are going to be involved with the data integration effort. Step 4, shown in green, we'll talk in detail about today, is now that you've gathered up all your stuff, you've thrown out your net and you've brought in all the stuff, organizing that in a way, sorting things out in a meaningful way to determine things like redundancies or near redundancies of elements and how those are going to be addressed through data integration efforts. A small task by any means. As you move forward after this, you get into the ETL, the process of extracting, transforming, and loading those data into the updated integrated system. Step 6 is the checking to make sure that all is performing as expected. 7 is maintaining, and there that you have the supports to maintain the integrated data system. So, since you've heard this long, here's a little bonus section. This will be on the quiz. Software developers, does it take to change a light bulb? Even anything else? I laughed, okay? You may be hardware, you may be software. I thought it was funny. By that joke from Alexis. Now into some of the step 4. Remember that completing Master Integrated Dataset. And also are going to invite you by the chat box, and later we take you off mute. Done this before? Would love to hear from you. Frankie and I beat the bushes a little bit trying to find some states who would be willing to share and talk a little bit about this unsuccessfully. we've got a couple of folks who have some insight into this, but we'd really like to hear from those of you who have done this or are in process in doing this or plan to do this, and hear exactly how this integrated data set and the working together to complete the Master Integrated Data Set has worked. In the slide, you can see our visual representation of this. Multiple sets are out there. You've captured that information in your step 3. Step 4 depicts multiple people sitting down together. So that's where you're going to work on trying to reduce or eliminate the redundancies across the different data collections and data elements that are out there. Those may not have been mapped in CEDS, and we're going to show you a lot about CEDS in a little bit. Finding what the redundancies are, finding the duplications or near duplications, and wrestling those and aligning those and making sure that any alignment of redundancy will still work for all of your data reporting needs that you have is really important. And then coming up with a final product of a integrated data system depicting the right there. Step 4 comprises of 3 separate steps, as we've seen here. It's redundancies. When you're looking across data systems, we believe is going to take you the most time and effort to resolve, right? And we're going to, or Ant's actually going to show you some pretty neat little tricks about how to do this using CEDS, and I think you find that interesting. So, going to determine redundant elements, resolve, and then compile master data set after you've done that. Obviously, anytime you resolve anything, you've got multiple people involved with multiple perspectives. It's going to take time, a little effort. Okay. All right. I like this slide as well. Science teams about 80% time is spent preparing data, with together 20% of that time complaining about the need to prepare data. So I'm smiling because I've been there, done that. Now, we estimate that the effort, it's not a really particularly well quantified graph. We believe effort is not so much determining really what's real. It's really resolving the issues of redundancies across all the staff that are affected by those data. All the compiling can be done by much fewer people and done pretty efficiently and effectively once all of the solutions have been. So we understand that these are relative bars. We see the tallest being the resolution. We understand also that some of you may be working very efficient departments. Everybody's getting along great. Everybody has the same vision, and that may not be reflective. And so the height of that bar graph here might be quite a bit lower, or it could be higher, depending which environment you're working in. And the redundant element piece, just a little bit, we're going to go on and with the redundancy, so more here coming through. Now, I want to prep a little trip through CEDS that Anthony is going to take you on. And it's that state that we think the using of CEDS, Common Education Data Standards, is a particularly powerful tool, extremely valuable in this effort that we to help you with in terms of finding and organizing your data elements in a way that helps in resolving the redundancies. Okay, you may remember if you were on the Step 3 webinar that showed some CEDS reporting tools. Now we're going to show you how to use the data that you have in CEDS to generate the particularly redundant list, or not a particularly redundant list, a list of redundant elements, right? You may not have all of your data sources in CEDS, but to the extent that you have them there, it simplifies the organization of this important step and it really supports your work effort on this. Now, we have a question here which will help inform our overview of CEDS. It's in the form of another poll, Travis, and it's asking you to indicate to us your level of familiarity with CEDS, so we get a sense of the audience's understanding. Thanks, Jeff. 5-point, or in this case, a 5-letter poll between familiar and extremely familiar with CEDS. And if you would select, and it's just state staff that we're asking about, not TA providers, if you would give us your insight on your familiarity with CEDS. About 3 respondents, it looked like, included the non-respondents. I'm not sure. So you're going to tell me when you think this is complete. Welcome. Travis, about ready results? Okay. Side to my co-presenter, Anthea.
Well, that's
a little different than I expected.
different than we expected. In terms of, we kind of anticipated that if folks had attended the Step 3 webinar, that you might feel like you had a little bit more familiarity with CEDS. But given that, we'll move on and we'll talk a little bit more. We'll give you a little bit more context about CEDS before we jump straight into it. Bruce or Travis, would you be able to just pass the ball over to me?
I'm not allowed to play catch with this ball. I'll let you do that.
Well, and I just noticed Bruce got all the jokes in his presentation, so I apologize tremendously if it's just a little bit dry. So CEDS is Common Education Data Standards. It is, true to its name, an education data standard that was designed by multiple stakeholders across early childhood through K-12, post-secondary, and workforce data. So what is, when you go to the website, it's ceds.ed.gov. And there it has the CEDS standard, so the set of data elements, definitions, option sets, and that has resources around using the standard, and then has a variety of tools. So to talk about the line tool, which is designed to map or align your data dictionary against the CEDS standard. So we'll explore that a little bit today. We also have a tool called Connect, which is designed to input the information about reports or policy questions or other data analysis that you want to do that identifies which elements are needed, and then allows you to indicate how that analysis is done, what are the calculations around it. And then we have a third tool, it's called My Connect, and it puts Connect and Align together. And you take a connection with the element instructions, apply it to an Align map, and able to see what elements you have aligned to CEDS to create the connection. And that work goes hand in hand with CIID's gender tool, and kind of where gender is to fall into play to be getting reports. And outcome of a lot of this work from Step 3 for 5, and so on. With step 4, I also want to say that while this might seem a little bit foreign right now, when you're using the toolkit to integrate data systems, you're going to be using CDS for step 3. So by the time you get here in step 4 to create this report for analysis, it would be pretty similar and easy to work with and not typing in the least. Also feel free to put questions in the chat box if you have questions as we through this or other questions. We're happy to pause and answer those. So with CIID for 4.1, so we've already done that. I'm going to pull it up here. We've already built maps. We're going to analyze them and use them. And click on this Explore Map-Based Reports, which just means it's on that we have in the system. A quick process to step through. What we're going to do is select the domain where the maps are. So I created some fictional maps and I put them across K-12 assign P20W, so I'm just selecting all to sort of multi-select there. And then I select my state. So my fictional maps are from the fictional state of AB, so I'm selecting not applicable. But I would select your own state, and they show up bolded for you when you're logged into your map. The states that you see here bolded right now, I've elected to share a map publicly with anybody who's using CIID. I live in Massachusetts, so if I was working for Massachusetts and I had a map in there, Massachusetts show up bolded for me. So it's not applicable and hit next. And it'll show me the maps that I can select. So I have the AB Student Assessment System, I'll select that. AB Special Education System, AB Student Information System, and AB P20 System. So everything that I'm able to see there would show up, and I'd select the maps that I want to look at, and I'll see yes in this place and hit next again. And this allows me to pick type of report. So I'm choosing this report, Data Dictionary plus CIID info. And this means that it's going to show all of my data elements from that I selected and how they align to CIID elements. So that's using CIID as the bridge to examine the redundancy among our data systems. And then here I'm selecting all CIID elements. You also have the option, you can break that down and select only certain elements and choose, maybe you're only looking at a data, you can do that, or looking at student data or only at teacher data, but we're just selecting all. Although what you'll see when I hit next is I only have one element in all of my maps. So, it's on the way on the previous slide. And so this is what your report will look like once you get here. Again, you would have more than one element, so the green area you would see going all the way down the screen. And this shows the CS element here on the left, my system. So you see AB Special Education System, my system's on the right. With the options, you're able to download this report. So it downloads everything in an Excel file. Just a snap and blown up a little bit so you can see the Excel file will have the CIID element here on the left, my elements over on the right. Each of these 4 elements from each system, these I aligned all of them to the same CIID element primary disability type. So you can see their names in each of my systems. And you'll notice that in my 20 system, the element had a different name. It was called Disability Category IDEA. I was able to, through the alignment to CIID, kind of identify that is the same as primary disability type in CIIDS, which happens to be is what I've called primary disability in my other system. So we're able to kind of group up all of the elements, CIIDS element we want to look at. So go back to this report page. The CIIDS on the left, mine on the right. That's consistent. I can click on show details, and that's going to give me more information. So CIIDS on highlighting for you. Here on the left, we have the data element name, primary disability type, its definition here, and the options set for that. Over on the right is map element name. This was my P20 system, disability category IDEA, my definition, and then here it has the alignment to CIIDS. So it's a CIIDS element, the additional alignment is identical in wording, and option set alignment. So wait to how it aligns to CIIDS, and also making sure that for the different filaments that have the same O2 CIIDS and sort of start to compare them to each other. Down here I would see all of the aligned to the primary disability type. What I did do as an example, go into here and copy of this information, and put it into a Word document, and then just while I copied all of that, put it in a Word document, the same information, just helpful. Maybe you wanted to email a packet to folks who would be participating in the meetings within STEP to examine redundancies, or if you're in a situation where you might be meeting without internet, you're not all looking at a computer screen at the same time, this might be a useful way to do that. Before we move on, let's pause to see if anyone had any questions around CIID 4.1.
Bruce, I threw you a question, slide 30 that I saw. Confirm understanding around use of CIIDS. Autism was good AUT on one and EU on another.
Mm-hmm.
So in the table on the left, code for autism at the top of that list was AUT. And then on the bottom, autism is AU. Is this what CIIDS helps me kind of figure out where those are? And I'm going to have to wrestle that, whether or not the T is going to make it my code.
So option set alignment, this section here, then within step 3, when you've gone through and you've documented your data dictionaries and aligned them to CIIDS, that's when comparing those option sets. So the reason where Bruce is seeing a difference in code, I actually kind of set that up within the BP20 system, that this has a maximum length of 2, so all of the codes are only 2 characters. In the S, you'll see that those characters are 2 characters in length, some are 3 characters. And have a note that an option set alignment, they're the same concepts but would require transformation on value to align with CIIDS. So that's a situation where you're able to look at prints there, and then what might take sort of down the line, for instance, to create the ETL if you're to want to CIIDS, and also you can think then about what it might take for your other data elements. Does help answer your question, Bruce?
It did. Thank you.
All right, just remind everyone, if you do have questions or thoughts, just select all participants in the chat box and you can send a question out and we will hopefully answer it. The last two pieces of task 4.1 are to review of differences and duplications. So either you're able to do it within the CDS Align tool, print it out and look at it, to figure out, are these in fact different and do we need to talk about them? Are these in fact the same, do we need to talk about them? Or are they different and note that and move on because they're not representing the same information? We did that report and it's very helpful for the elements that are aligned to CIIDS, but you may find that you have a section of data elements that don't CIIDS element, and then you may need to do some manual work across systems for those, but to me, that's eliminated a big chunk of the work that would happen if CIIDS to do that with all the rest of them. And for 4.1.5, the cases where you discover data stewards need to be brought to the mix, or there's another system that we get to and it's important to include, and so we need to go, back to the project plan and loop back to steps and align that system to CIIDS and go from there. So kind of in this process, that may be a time where it comes up that there's other that needs to take place before fully moving forward for task 4.2. And we'll pause really very briefly here just to see if anything how it's there around certification and project plan.
Redundant elements, just no thing in redundancy that I've looked at, having worked in Statement of Education for many years. The concept of when may appear redundant, but when they're collected also comes up into play. So you collect race in October, you may collect it again in May, and policy or legislative-wise, they appear redundant, but actually they're not, because they have to be again, according to legislation or whatever the case may be, your policy in the state, in particular time periods, keep them separate. So that's one to note related to redundant elements and when you're going through trying to find those.
And then on to that, same goes for context. So if you're dealing with, say we're talking about directory data, the list of LEAs and schools, that may mean thing if you're talking to the finance folks, but something completely different when we're talking about enrollment and assessments and that kind of data.
Thank you. 4.2, which is the resolve element redundancies. So it's kind of good too. Within this task, take up the most time because there's a lot of work to do. Or you may find that there's not a lot of work to do, which is fantastic, but it might be that there are multiple systems that have elements that need to be considered. There may be a number of meetings with data stewards and bringing everyone to the table, looking across the definitions, the option sets, Bruce kind of put out there the length that's allowed in the definitions to make sure that the work there is done clearly. Considerations place. But the good thing about this is as you're resolving the redundancies now, it's going to eliminate a lot of back and forth work that could come down the road working with developers and working on the ETL and trying to clarify things and sort things out at that point. And of course, in this section where you're looking at elements and you're getting a bunch of people together, it helps to have unbiased facilitators who can help run these meetings and make sure that people are to kind of consolidate the recommendations and agree on them. Maybe it's someone who doesn't have a whole lot of skin in the game, so to speak, that's not going to be pushing for things one way or the other. You're going to pull together the master data set for integration in 4.3. And at this point with consideration, Bruce, I think this is where I turn it back to you. So I'm going to
we talked a bit about this whole process of resolving redundancies, and clearly this is where communication becomes king. Here, we're not asking for your answers. We're simply seeding the deck a little bit. I don't know if you can see the deck, but anyway, we're putting these out as these are the types of things that we suggest you would want to think about. About this, I've got something I want to ask. It has talked about putting a list of considerations for you around this data integration, specific special education data, which is a little tricky, right? Especially IEP is typically for a 365-day period when those data come in, how long that special education flag therefore good for, what's the authoritative data sources for potentially updating that, when that occurs, do you have a moment-in-time system for collection of your special education data? Are you living in a state where you're having real-time all IEPs in your data system, entire state? So questions that we might ask, or the consideration questions we might ask, might differ depending on where you come into that mix. If input, if they think that's valuable, I'd like to hear it, or at least hear chats about it, putting together some sort of considerations document that would be a plethora of have you considered this? If your state is this design around your IDE data, ask these types of questions about it. But that would let us know. Either you're in this chat, when we evaluate this survey, put something there as a note. Hit us up offline as well. We'd like to know. And actually, that was a slide, wasn't it, Travis? That was my get feedback from the audience slide. I'm going to go in Nathan one more time and invite them if they have anything else on this topic. We're probably a couple of minutes late. But anything else on resolving redundancies? I don't want to lose the opportunity of getting your wisdom.
So that I've come across doing data integration projects, I've actually found several times that the data so different between the two systems because they were used in different ways. Between going back to Ant's example, directory data used one way in one system and another way in a collection system. I was working on in Washington State, we actually realized we had to kind of go back to the drawing board on the source systems and resolve those data issues at that level before we could even consider doing data integration. So that was kind of an eye-opener. One thing, a lot of times the data isn't necessarily owned by SEA. In those cases, if it's provided by school districts, the school districts are the actual owners of that data. And so bringing them in and getting them involved in the conversations about how to, what is the actual meaning of the data, how is it used, how is it created, is valuable. Because you can find more details talking to the LEA people or the school people who are actually creating the data than you might otherwise.
Yeah, that including the A's is a very important detail, and it's important in relation to, as Nathan's mentioned before, the context or the process. So one experience, I've had good and bad experiences. Good ones when I've included the LEAs and the appropriate stakeholders when resolving redundancies and working on master integrated datasets, and bad ones when I have forgotten to include them. One bad one was related to the dropout report. It seemed pretty straightforward. We had 2 collections of the dropout report. One they keyed in manually, one coming live from their student information system, the data necessary to produce it. We decided we were going to build this and automate the whole thing. It's simple. It was element for element. We talked to the program offices there at the state. See basic, no use, element for element. We put the report into production. We had not included the LEAs. And yes, all the elements were the same and all the option sets were the same and all the data appeared the same. But the process behind that interpreted when they would report the data or what school would be responsible for that, which had never been documented anywhere, and how they were interpreting it, and there really wasn't any kind of a process in place for us to understand it. So we were having to read that report in production, live, work on it, and get it out while they're actually working on it. So overall, the project did end up a success, which is good, but we didn't need the appropriate stakeholders in these conversations. So it's always just the elements and the option sets. There's such in context and process behind it that including the stakeholders is extremely important and the right ones. And meaning out everything.
Well, that right there was worth the price of admission. Being able to include those LEAs from the get-go so you don't have to redo it later. Thanks. That was excellent. I'm not proud of that necessarily. Anybody in the audience land have any suggestions, questions, experiences they want to share about resolving redundant issues around data integration? Simply questions, how to? Where do you line around conversational components? But I really appreciate, Dwayne, what you and Nathan brought to this. Anthony, are you up on the go? You can do your Zoomer slide. See, there you go.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I am. And if you could, or Travis could just pass me the presenter ball, I can advance the slides there. Thank you. So at task 4.3 is to compile master data set based on data dictionary. I got this good ETL, extract, transform, load. So it's a little bit late for most folks for breakfast, but kind of a little visual on what extract, transform, load means. So with that 3, it's reconciling the data dictionary, so capture all of the information, all of the decisions and updates that will impact the input systems, and then finalizing the master data set and data dictionary. So getting ready for the final sign-off to be able to forward to the ETL, and definitely sure to work with the technical staff and the developers so that that document is in good position to be able to move on to the developers and not need a whole lot of back and forth because you've already provided the appropriate information. Some of us here at CIID kind of like to hit documentation over the head. So like it's all about making sure what you have in documentation, what you have is documented well, and so that folks are able to pick up and really know what's going on. There's not a lot of questions. It's really clear, and that just makes things easier down the road, both in moving forward and if there's any, suddenly there's a staff handoff and transition, someone else can be able to pick up the work, move forward without missing a bunch of things. So, Bruce, back to you. We're going to open it up for some discussion here.
This is to encourage people to think about past questions. We pointed out, Graph, that we felt that the vision and the people part of this work around developing your master integrated data set is going to take you the most effort for the most time. These are the types of questions that come to mind. We're curious if you've done this, or even if you're thinking about embarking on this, what your questions might be. I'd love to know from any of you how long it actually took you to complete this master data set. Weeks, months. Challenging. Did you come up with a grader? What did it look like when there was variance of opinions? Did you get out of there without too many bandages? Those types of things. So those of you brave enough to share, feel free. Travis, I don't know current status on phones, if they're muted or not muted. Don't know anybody who wants to make a pronouncement or not. They can use the chat as well. All righty, bold enough to share. Now's your opportunity. Here's the feedback. I'm going to move to the next slide, not to cut anybody off, but just to share with you how kids can assist in this effort. You see points there. With state. We're going to encourage you at any point in time to get in touch with us. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Sorry, Bruce, I think you got cut off a little bit just then. If you want to repeat what you were saying about the slide 40.
Oh, okay. Is how. Go ahead and put everybody else back on. You're hearing a lot of feedback.
So I think we have you as a common number, which so I'm going to pick up here on slide 4, and hopefully we get that resolved with your audio. So we've got a list of things to think about in ways that can help. Thing that we want to say, we are going to drop the link for the evaluation into the chat box right now, but also if you hang out in the webinar until CIID closes, we are going to go directly to that webinar evaluation when that happens. But in terms of how we can help, there's a lot of work that we can do, both working with intensive TA and also just helping out as you go through this. One of the big ways that CIID can help is we can engage the CDS experts who we have available to us to help for work around using CDS tools or thinking about CDS. We can help as well with design documentation, thinking about how that relates to Step 5. We put a lot of thought into Toolkit, how it flows from Step 1 through Step 7. So kind of forward thinking we can help with. Then in terms of sources that we have available, we just want to share a couple things, highlight a few within. If you're sharing this webinar with someone on your team, you may also want to encourage them to view the Step 3 webinar that was held in January. We also have the CDS Aligned Module 6 goes through that process of creating reports that we looked at earlier. We also want to note that there is a new CEDS newsletter that came out today, and there's a link to view the newsletters below. You can also sign up to receive those. We encourage you, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Let us know. You can reach any of the three presenters, Aaron, Bruce, and myself. You can also email CIIDTA@aemcorp.com for help. And then thank you all for joining us this afternoon. as a reminder, if you're able to just keep this webinar window open until CIID ends the webinar, you'll be taken directly to that evaluation survey. I also do have that question in about thinking of considerations for redundancies. So if you have thoughts, we definitely appreciate your input there as well. And with that, joining, and we'll close out unless, Aaron, there's any last words that you have.
We really encourage you to complete the evaluation. And as always, if you have any questions related to the toolkit or integration work, or have any for CIID staff to help you and your team, or experiencing any issues, please email ca@aemcorps.com or go to the CIID website, more information, which is cidta.grade60.org. So thank you all very much.